2021 community meeting of the First District. Miller, Edna, Glenn Ryan, and I share Emerson with the 4th District. So glad all of you who are able to participate. I know it's St. Patrick's Day, and I don't think I have on any green, so I may be in trouble. I wish everyone a very happy St. Patrick's Day, and hopefully I won't keep you too long for those who will be out safely celebrating. I want to go ahead and get right to it. We're honored this evening to have Dr. Paige McNulty, who is in charge of, who is the chief of the Gary Community School Corporation. She will be giving us some updates on what's happening there. I'm sure you've heard a lot of things in the news. We will also hear in terms of code enforcement from Ms. Millie Glenn, but also Mr. Robert Brinston, who is the code enforcement officer for the First District, and he also lives in the First District, which is always nice. Before Dr. McNulty starts, let me give you an overview. So we'll hear about Gary Community School Corporation, then we'll hear about our code enforcement efforts. I will give an overview of some of the activities and the work that's happening right now within the council to keep people updated with what we are working on. And then I will highlight upcoming events and other announcements that hopefully will be useful to everyone. I was very thrilled a couple weeks ago to be at Westside Leadership Academy to cheer on the boys basketball team as they won the 4A sectionals. This past Saturday, we were in Michigan City and they won the region. And so they're heading to the semi-state this weekend, and I will be there in Lafayette, and the Common Council threw a pizza party for the boys basketball team after their practice last week. So it's so great to celebrate them, celebrate our young people, because they're not only our future, but they're our present. And it's important for them to know that they're part of a larger community that's cheering them on, not only in terms of their athletic ability, but their academic success, which I know Dr. McNulty will talk about. So just by way of introduction, I'll let you take it away, Dr. McNulty.
Thank you. And again, thanks for inviting me. It's my honor and pleasure to be here this evening. And yeah, we're so excited to be celebrating our young men who have excelled in basketball this year. And again, not only excelled, as he mentioned, in basketball, but they are truly student first and then athletes. We've worked really hard at implementing study tables this year for all of our athletes. And these young men have been attending study tables all year. And we're proud to say that all of these gentlemen are on the honor roll. So not only will they have an opportunity when they leave high school to pursue their athletic abilities, but we want them to also to be able to pursue their academic abilities in college. So we're really excited about that. As he mentioned, the team is traveling to Lafayette this Saturday. They'll be playing against Carmel at 2:45 our time, 3:45 Lafayette time, and we will be streaming it through our Facebook and other platforms as well. There are a few tickets left still on sale. If you're interested, you can go to our website. We're only allowing 750 tickets per team to be sold. But if you're interested in going, there's a few tickets left, and you can find the link how to purchase those tickets on our website. In addition, the city, the chief of the fire department has offered up the fire trucks. So at noon on Friday, we're going to do a grand send off for the team. They're going to start from Westside. They'll travel down Burr and then down 25th Street and then down Broadway before they get on the highway, so that we can give them a celebratory grand send off in celebration of their accomplishment. If they win on Saturday, which we expect them to, then they'll go on to Indianapolis on April 3rd for the final state championship. So it's a huge celebration, not only for our school, but for our community. We've had tons of support. So big deal for us. We're excited. I also wanted to mention some updates about what's happening within the Gary Community Schools. We did end 2020 with just under $6 million deficit, which we think is great. We started at $122 million if you have been tracking us. We expect after this school year that we'll be at about a $3 million deficit. So we're making great strides on being financially solvent. In addition, you might remember that we were afforded the House Bill 1065, which enables us to use those funds for capital projects. We've already started our HVAC for 5 schools where we receive new HVAC systems within their building, which is heating and cooling. And then we have roofs being replaced at 6 of our buildings. And West Side will be done in sections because it's so expensive. But West Side will have a quarter of its roof being replaced here within the next 30 days. So those are already underway. We've already done the track at West Side, and the top seal and the striping will be finished here in the next couple of weeks when the weather allows. And then we'll continue on with the swimming pool and the jumbotrons and the football stadium and all those things sports-wise that we promised that we were going to do with the capital projects. In addition, we've also added extra security measures at the schools. So all the schools have what's called now a safe visitor check-in system. So when any visitor comes to our school, you have to present an ID and it's swiped through a machine so that we can check to make sure that anybody who's entering our building is not a sex offender or a felon, because all schools districts are required to ensure the safety of all the school buildings. So we think that's a great enhancement. Schools have also been outfitted with new cameras, buzzers, those types of things to make sure that we're up to speed with keeping our buildings safe. The big elephant in the living room, if you will, is the new monies that have been sent to the city and to the school district for the emergency relief fund. So we were told here recently that Gary Community Schools was going to receive $95 million. And so after further checking, however, today, that number is not exactly $95 million because that money also includes the charter schools, et cetera. So the monies that's going to be coming actually to the Gary Community Schools will be about $50 million. I'm not saying only, but it's not 95. $50 million to be used over the next several years. And that money is for additional PPE stuff that we may need, fixing ventilation systems, but mostly it's to be used only for learning loss that has happened across the nation while we've been in COVID under this pandemic. So we'll be using it for intense remediation and intervention programs for our students. For example, we're going to be doing an extended summer school program this summer, which will be 6 weeks long as opposed to the normal 3 weeks long. A full day summer school, which will be STEM based. And then we'll do a second one for our high school students so they can continue on with their credits and their credit recoveries towards graduation requirements. And then when the students return in the fall, we're going to be adding an extra hour and a half to their school day, which is mandatory, which is again going to continue to work on literacy and remediation and intervention for all students so that we can continue on with that learning loss. We did implement the iReady test in the fall for our baseline testing data, and then we just redid it again here the last several weeks, and most schools have about a 10 to 12% increase on a typical year. This year across the nation, schools are seeing about a 3 to 5% increase in their test scores because, again, of COVID. We saw about a 4 to 5% increase in our testing across the district. We will be publishing that on our website on our Path Forward plan as we've been presenting throughout the school year. So please look for that data on our website so you can dig into the data a little bit more in our academics. As we mentioned earlier in the school year, we have to take attendance for what's called our statewide ADM attendance, which is how many students are in your school district at any given time. And in September, that was our first count. And the district was up by about 5 students, which isn't a lot. But the reason for that celebration is that's the first time that the district ever saw an increase in enrollment in over 10 years. Now we have to do it again in February, and we did, and we're up another 75 students. So we're up at about 80 students for this school year total so far, which is a huge sign, I think, of positive growth and people having more faith in our school district and that we're doing the right things for our school district and for our kids. So we fully expect that we'll have another jump in enrollment in the fall, and we'll continue to report that out as we move along. We have already started our enrollment efforts for registration and are reaching out to families across the city so they can start enrolling their students for next school year. Some other questions that I've been asked over the last several weeks are about the 3 advisory board positions that are open on our current advisory board. I was informed by the advisory board president that there were 3 open positions. So we did post for those on behalf of the advisory board. The advisory board did interview for those 3 positions, and they were unable to come to a consensus on those 3 positions. So at this time, they have decided to keep those positions vacant. And they, at this time, they're planning on waiting for those to come open in November and have those be up for an election. And then once the election happens in November, the 3 new people will take their seats in January. So that's what's happening with those 3 positions. And then I also wanted to mention some of the efforts that we're making with the dollars that we're pumping into the school. We're pumping millions of dollars into the school system right now. And that is that we have formed a curriculum committee within our district. It's been comprised of teachers and administrators. They've been working diligently all year on looking at robust curriculum. We have not had new curriculum for 10, 15 years within our district. And they did adopt a new reading curriculum, and that will start in the fall for all students K through 12. And then they're charged from us to continue to meet to now look at a math curriculum. And we're going to continue to do that because well-functioning school districts have a cycle of about 5 years, and while they're looking to adopt the next one. So we'll do English and then math and then science, et cetera. And then in 5 years, we'll start back again with English. So in the fall, we'll have a new English curriculum that we'll be pushing out, which will have a digital component as well as hard books for our students. And then I also want to mention the referendum ambassadors. You might have heard me say that we were welcoming people to apply for the referendum ambassador committee. This committee does not replace the advisory board. It's a committee that will meet with me so that I can talk with them about monies that are being receipted in from the referendum dollars, how it's being spent, and for us to seek feedback from them for suggestions on priorities as we spend the money going forward. So we had I had initially said I'd have about 20 people on that committee, and I actually received about 70 applications. So after I reviewed the applications and gave it a lot of thought, I decided I'm going to accept all 70. If there's 70 people that are interested in meeting with me to talk about how these dollars are being spent or give suggestions, I welcome all of that. So all those people have been informed that they're welcome to join me. We're going to have our first meeting in May, which will be a kind of a budgeting 101 class with myself and our CFO to talk about school finance and how dollars are allowed to be spent. And then at the end of June, when the dollars start coming in, then we'll meet again to talk about priorities and get suggestions. And then how I envision this committee moving forward would be that we'll break into subcommittees, and some people might be interested in how those dollars would work for academics, some for sports, fine arts, etc. And they can meet and do some research and then come back and report out to the larger group. But we're excited that we had such a large amount of people that were interested, and I look forward to working with all of them. So I know I've told you a lot. I'll stop right there, and then you can ask questions if you have some.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr.
Sure.
McNulty. If you could ask your questions via the chat box, that is the best way to do so. So make sure you keep yourselves muted. And if you could ask your questions in the chat box.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that lots of good things are happening in the school district.
Right, and that is a very good thing. I'm going to ask the question based on something I heard earlier from someone who may or may not be on this call. But basically, someone said, look, the school corporation is getting, at that point we thought it was, I think, $94 million, but it's actually $50 million. Is the referendum moot, right? That's a question. I know it's not, but why do they need the referendum now? Can we cancel the referendum because they've gotten this boatload of money from President Biden and Congress? So what's your response to that?
Yeah, great question. So no, the monies that we're receiving in from the President Biden's initiative can only be used for remediation and intervention and PPE. It can't be used for things that we had earmarked for the referendum. So those are 2 separate pots of money. So yeah, we can't use it to pay off the debt. It won't help us get back towards local control any quicker. It'll simply be used towards student serviced programs.
Thank you. Any questions that people have for our school corporation? Please put those in the chat box. Well, I will ask one additional question. Have the teachers gotten their raises? So what kinds of things that were promised that have already happened as part of the referendum? And what things do you foresee happening in the immediate or near future, that is within the next, say, 6 months, when the referendum dollars begin to be received into the system?
Great. So yes, the teachers already received their raise, even though we're not receiving the money in until the end of June. We didn't want to have the teachers wait until that time. So we took what's called a tax warrant out, tax anticipated warrant out, and that enables us to receive some of that money early. And so the teachers did receive their raises, and that was the first time they've had a raise in about 12 years. It came out to be about a 5% raise for our teachers, and that was about a 1.3%, $1,300,000 of the referendum dollars went directly to our teachers. And they'll get that every year for the next 8 years.
Thank you.
And that's important to note because we can't be competitive with our neighboring districts if we're not able to pay our teachers, recruit new teachers, and keep them and retain them. So that was important.
Question here, the referendum passed. What effect will it have as it relates to day-to-day operations?
So for day-to-day operations, it's going to help us, again, be able to buy this curriculum. It's going to be able to help us continue to fix our facilities. It's going to help us with our operating funds and safety measures that we need within the school. We've had lots of deferred safety measures. And as you just heard me say, curriculum was sorely needed. Social emotional needs were needed for our students. We need social workers. We need social emotional curriculum, resources. So all those will be being able to be pumped in directly to the kids.
And I will ask in terms of capacity building, right? So the referendum expires in 8 years, and assuming another one is not passed, how will you be able to maintain the raises, to increase, salaries to remain competitive within the region when those dollars are no longer there? So what types of capacity building is being done, and are there reserves that are being planned to ensure that the school corporation can be resilient when inevitable challenges present themselves as in the days ahead?
Right, exactly. So I think that it's essential that once we get this budget balance, which we're getting closer to, that then we start putting some money in the bank, as most school districts have. You have to have, several months of payroll and money so that you can pay if there's an emergency. Right now, if there's an emergency and a boiler goes out, we're in trouble. Or we had been in trouble. So we need to make sure that not only are we solving the debt problem, that we also are able to have a little bit of reserve. So that's upon us over the next several years to make sure that we continue to do that. And in addition, as you heard me say, it's essential that we start attracting more students back into the school district. And we're starting to do that slowly with the 80 students that we got this year. We need to gain another, 100 kids next year and another 100 after that. With more kids is more tuition reimbursement. And that's how we're going to grow and have the funds that we need to make sure that we're solvent.
Thank you so much. I don't see any more questions for Dr. McNulty, but we will have you back probably later in the summer. Give you a little break.
One more thing?
Yes.
Just one last pitch. We are always looking to hire teachers. We're looking to hire teachers who might think of this as a second career. So we have started a program this year through IUN University for people who might be in a separate field and would like to change their career path. And we are paying for them to get their teaching certification. We have about 30 some people that are going through that program right now. They come to us, they say, I'm an artist, for example, or I'm a journalist, or whatever it might be. But I think I'd like to work with young children, or I'd like to work with some teenagers. We hook them up with IUN, and then they sign a contract with us. They begin teaching, and while they're teaching, it's an 18-month program. We pay for their entire certification licensure through IUN. And then when they leave, when they get their certification, they have to sign a 3-year commitment to stay with us past that. But we pay for them to get their degree so that we can get some people who want to give back to the community and get another licensure with us. So that's a free program. If anybody's interested, we're getting ready to start our second cohort here in a few months.
Fantastic. And so just lastly, for those who want to be on the route this Friday, can you go over what that route is?
Sure.
I know it starts at noon, leaving from West Side.
Starts at noon, leaving from West Side, and then from West Side we will go down Burr, south on Burr, and then we're going to take go east on 25th Street to Broadway. Then we'll go north on Broadway all the way up to 5th Street, where the students will then get on the highway. So if anybody wants to join us along the parade and honk and wave, the kids would love that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Dr. McNulty. And as I said, we'll have you back probably in the summer as we're getting ready for the school. I know you all will be recruiting and seeking to get students and telling us how the spring semester went as we prepare for the fall. So looking forward to that, and I look forward to continuing to working with you as we've already done. And I will see you in Lafayette this weekend for a
Thank
successful...
you. Go Cougars.
That's right. Paul's up.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Excellent. So at this time, we're going to transition from our education conversation and discuss code enforcement. I know that as the snow has melted and we approach spring and summer, we start paying more attention to those code enforcement issues that we know are so prevalent, and that we are, as a city, doing our best to manage. And there's a team of folks who do that within the city. And we have today Mr. Robert Brinston, who is a resident of the 1st District, but is also the code enforcement officer for both the 1st District, and we share him with the Morningside section of the 6th District. Again, if you have questions, please put those in the chat box. Mr. Brinston, are you ready?
Yes, I am, William. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. Would you like to tell us about code enforcement?
I would like questions about code enforcement. I mean, I just can't tell you what code enforcement is. I mean, if they're having issues, they need to contact me at 219-805-3141.
Okay, so that's 219-805-3141 is the contact information for Mr. Brinston, and we will have questions. So let me read the first one here. It says code enforcement in Gary needs to be conducted on a prioritized basis. Please designate certain areas as high priority, like Old Hobart Road and the downtown Miller alleys. Main thoroughfares need attention. Lake Street and Miller Avenue look to have about half of its buildings in a state that is unkempt and blighted. How do you ever expect to attract new businesses with this situation? What do you intend to do about this problem? When will code enforcement be focused in these areas? This affects our property values and attracts trash. It also propels investment. So I guess the general question is, how is code enforcement prioritized? And is there, obviously, all the districts are large and complicated and complex, and there's different areas in them that you can focus on, but how do you focus on particular sections of the district?
Well, we usually take the 311s, and then I get a phone call. I try to go to every phone call that I get. I also observe the neighborhood. Sometimes I'm in neighborhoods for hours and hours, especially in Glen Park, doing dumping and collecting evidence to see who might have dumped on the property, putting stickers on cars that their license plates are expired, or it's a flat tire, or they're parking in their their yards or on the sidewalk. We get all those complaints and we go to all of them. And then we observe ourselves. So there's really no thought out. If someone calls, if I go to a 311 that says that might have a dump or whatever, I just write the whole block up of what I see.
Okay.
I have a backlog for about at least 50 citations that I'm writing right now. All of us are. And one of the things we try to do is get these people in court, and we go with our evidence, and we do go by code. I worked in Illinois for 2 years as code enforcement, and yes, we did do blighted, all the trees and stuff. I have done some cases where some neighbor's tree may have grew in someone else's yard or messing up their car by the garage or the property line. I have taken it to court, and I've made the other neighbor at least acknowledge that he or she needs to cut her tree, or if it's going to be a fine. I do all that. We all do all that, and that's what we do. Now we have 5 people, and we cover a lot of areas. We're needed through the whole city. I try to stay in Miller and go to my district, but it's a lot of things I see, even up Fifth Avenue. I mean, between the Split and Fourth. I mean, it's a dang on couch in the middle of it. You pass it going to City Hall all the time. You try to call GNS, which is General Services. They're busy. You can't really blame them. We're doing the best job we can, people. People of Miller, people of Gary. We're doing everything we can. We see it too. We live here.
Thank you. So I think what Mr. Brinston is saying is that the problem is larger than the capacity. I think we all know that in terms of general services, we need a whole lot more folks. And even in terms of code enforcement, we need more people who do that on a day-to-day basis, and that's a resource issue. And I'll talk a little bit more about the dollars that will be flowing into the city. We're still figuring out how and to what extent we'll be able to use those for day-to-day operations, but there will be a conversation about, if we can, how can we beef up code enforcement and general services? I know those are big areas of need within the first district and throughout the city. I did want to ask, I believe you went into it. Can you give an overview of code enforcement operations? So maybe, Mr. Brinston, you kind of alluded to it, but can you explain the process from complaint to resolution? Call comes in, or you observe something, the person who makes the complaint, when do they hear back? How do they hear back? What's the legal process that the city follows in terms of code enforcement?
Well, we write up the citation. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I unmuted? I'm sorry.
We can hear you.
Yes, we write up the citation. We find out who the owner is. We get a parcel report, and we see who the owner is, and we find the owners. If it's either dumping, or sometimes you got to do a little bit more investigation. You might find someone's mail in that dump or some personal belongings. Have to find the person, and then that's who we cite. Or we'll also cite the owner, and we take it to court. Now, in court right now, we're kind of backlogged because of the corona. That's why we can only take like 40 cases into court right now. But we have a lot on our desk that we know, and a lot of these properties, like I know in the back of I think that's East 6. It's a couple of properties I wrote up back there, and there was some dumping going on. in downtown Miller. So all of these are going to court pretty soon. And when you take them to court, you hopefully someone to show up. A lot of them lawyer up, some of them don't show up. And then we give it another 30 days, and they come back and we have to recheck them again and keep rechecking them. And it just goes to court. And we get in contact with people. You know, I had 2 calls today. Matter of fact, I think one of them are on here. And they're complaining about the neighbors parked in the back. I told them to take pictures and then just email them to me, and I can get them in court. Because a lot of times with the residents, it's a lot of rentals that people are renting their homes. So we have to get the owners of the homes to put pressure on the renters to not park in the grass. And same way with cars on the streets, because we ticket those too. If they have a flat tire, or if, you know, like I got an abandoned car today, it was on Marion Street. And you put an orange tag on it, and hopefully the police will come pick it up.
Thank you. Any other additional questions related to code enforcement? Please put your questions in the chat box here. I may have a few more that I have received. Let's see here. The dairy barn. I know I really hate to call out a particular place, but I know that has been one that's been mentioned on social media, and we had a challenge there last year, and we got some sort of resolution, but it seems that the problem is reemerging. Is there any plan to deal with that? Has anything been done on that yet? Where are we with that particular issue? And there's also an issue with and I'm very familiar with this, the apartment buildings near the lagoon on Lake Street. In terms of overflowing containers, they may need more than one large receptacle in order to handle the amount of garbage, but it blows around and it overflows. So is there a particular plan in terms of those 2 areas?
All of those things you need to refer to my supervisor, Miss Millie Glenn.
Okay. So we'll make sure.
Any questions that you all may have of certain situations, contact my supervisor, Miss Millie Glenn.
Okay. And I did send out her contact information. In fact, we did a big mailer a few weeks ago. And if anyone did not receive one of those letters, please contact my office at 219-881-1315. Or you can put your information in the chat box, because we're growing our list. And as many people as possible should have that information, so you'll know how to directly contact the relevant city services that you're having an issue with. So Ms. Glenn was supposed to be on here. I'm not sure what happened, but we will make sure that she is available. She's the executive director of code enforcement in the very near future. If you could, Mr. Brinston, someone requests that you put Ms. Glenn's information within the chat box. Okay. If there's no.
Thank you, and thank you. We trying to do the best job we can, Mr. We are.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope you think so too.
I do, and I know that the city's resources.
Because we've had discussions. You know that I am really trying to help the city.
Absolutely. And so we are thankful, and I know that folks get frustrated. I'm going to ask this one question, which you may or may not be able to address tonight, but it says, once reported as a code violation, what is the closed loop process to provide resolution back to the person who reported the violation? I know that's in part a 311 challenge, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond, Mr. Brinston.
311,
Go ahead.
yeah, 311 is so packed. We try to do resolutions, but most of the time I'm out in the field where I have to see garbage and trash everywhere and alleys and abandoned homes. It's bad. I mean, I know I'm supposed to be First District's code enforcer, but I cover a lot of areas. And 311, you're supposed to put it back in 311 that we are doing resolutions. I've cleaned up a 311, but it's filled with also with stuff going to general services, and they're doing the same thing. You know, they're trying. It's a very, very exhausting process.
Okay, so I think there's a couple people who are asking questions about the city dump. And I know that it's really not a city dump. You want to speak to that, Mr. Brinston?
You have to talk to zoning or
Yes.
someone that gets paid for that. I mean, really, you have to
Right.
talk to one of those people.
Right.
Matter
So
of fact, go to the ballot box.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Brinston.
Thank you.
All right, so basically, one of the concerns I know is that the large item pickup is limited to one item, I believe, per week. Residents used to be able to go to the transfer stations to drop off items. We had to scale that back because many of you may recall when it came before us to increase the rate with Gary Sanitary District, it was about a $10 increase to roughly $28. And of course, I got a lot of feedback that people did not want to pay a 73% higher rate to the Gary Sanitary District. But part of that was that the Sanitary District had been subsidizing the cost of the whole city's garbage in terms of all city departments, the parks, redevelopment when they were doing demolitions, as well as the cost for the dump site, essentially, for folks to bring debris and large items. What we found is that the majority of the folks who were using those facilities were contractors and not everyday citizens. And so there is a you have to go there as a regular citizen. There's a fee that you have to pay to use it. We didn't want to put that fee on everybody since the majority of residents were not using it. It was a lot of contractors who were taking advantage of it. So we did not increase the rate high enough to allow that to continue to be free. So there was sort of a give and take in trying not to raise the rates too high, but we knew that the Gary Sanitary District had to pay a higher rate because they were being charged a higher rate by Republic in order to do our trash pickup. I think at the time we talked about the fact that we have a 12% non-collection rate. People who just don't pay for whatever reason. And for public health standards, we cannot simply ignore the garbage buildup. Also, we have a lot of costs, as I said earlier, with redevelopment. When they do the demolitions, that cost was being put onto the everyday citizen. And so we changed that, or in the process of changing that process, and we had to right size that in order to make sure that there were enough dollars for the sanitary district, who maintains the contract with Republic, to meet their obligations. Okay, so we will follow up further, and I'll make sure, I don't know what happened with Ms. Glenn, why she is not here, but we will make sure she is here, not at our next meeting, but perhaps in May or June, we'll have her back as well. But thank you, Mr. Brinston. I wanted to give a few updates about what's happening within the council. Some of you may follow our meetings. We meet every first and third Tuesday at 6:00 p.m., but we also have committee meetings, often the following week after the council meeting. And it is in the committee meetings where we do our work. We ask our questions, we learn what the ordinances are about, and we dig deep into the details. Always important to remind everyone of that, because sometimes you see us voting on things and you're like, oh, they're just saying yes or no, or they aren't asking any questions. We've already done that within the various committee meetings. I wanted to talk about two particular issues that I know have been getting a lot of attention and discussion. And it's important for the public to know that fiscal responsibility is one of our chief responsibilities. And ensuring that the use of dollars is being done correctly and efficiently. So we have launched the investigation committee, for those of you who are watching the council meeting, to deal with police vehicles. So many of you may know that the city purchased roughly 18 vehicles, most of which were for the police department, but there were 5 for general services. And there are questions about whether the state QPA was used. It was not used, but that's the way in which we can buy vehicles at a lower rate. So for example, $31,500 is the state QPA. That's the quantity purchase agent. And that is something that is a quantity purchase award. And there's only certain dealers that are able to do that. So we're looking into that because we spent a whole lot more on those police vehicles by not using that process, which meant that we could have ordered a whole lot more vehicles. And so we definitely know that our police need as many vehicles as possible. We have a lot of 2010 Crown Vics that have been heavily used that are still on the street, and we need to replace those with better vehicles that our officers deserve. And we need to make sure we do it in a cost-effective manner. Another issue that I and others have been looking into is the sale of the Genesis Center and Ivanhoe. We're concerned about how those transactions happened. These properties were owned by redevelopment, and I think it's important for everyone to know that redevelopment commission has its own board, and they're able to buy and sell real estate, and they own much of the real estate that is for sale in the city. So they owned Genesis Center and they owned Ivanhoe. Earlier this year and in late December, both of those properties were transferred and the deeds were recorded to a company, Acumen Industries Corporation. Many of you probably heard about them in the news media. It's a cell phone technology company. Some of us have raised concerns because, number one, I thought that the $50,000 price was way too low for 27 acres of developable land at Ivanhoe, and that we should be getting as much as possible for that property. But equally of concern is that the deeds were recorded with no, what we call in the law, a reversionary interest, such that if the company does not actually do what it promises to do, that is to build a factory, build a manufacturing facility, then the city would be able to reclaim that property and of course put it out for sale to a developer who was prepared or who is prepared to do that kind of work. The problem is that when you record a deed without a callback provision or reversionary interest, then the owner of that property could sell it today if they wanted to. They could literally flip the property. And we know that 27 acres in an urban community is a tremendous public asset. And I expressed sincere concern, and we're continuing to look into this, about why that happened the way that it did. Number one, the price was too low. The assessed value is $814,000. There were 2 appraisals done, one for $400,000, one for $800,000. That's a long way from $50,000. That's Ivanhoe. Other problem is at the Genesis Center. Many of you know that is another major public asset, public meeting place, event space within the city. It had its challenges, there's no doubt about it. The operating costs were high, but I believe just like a park, it is and acted as a public good, a place to gather, a place to have events in a central location within the city. Well, that is supposed to become the headquarters for Acumen Industries Corporation. Equally, I expressed concerns not so much about the price, which was $2.5 million that it was sold for, but the terms of the sale. And here's what I mean by that. In the purchase agreement, redevelopment gave the company 180 days post-closing to pay the $2.5 million. But there's two problems. Number one, the deed from redevelopment to this company was recorded with no reversionary clause, such that if this company does not in fact make its headquarters at the Genesis Center, we have no power to reclaim that property and put it out to bid to a company that would be prepared to do that. But here's what's more concerning to me. No mortgage was recorded. The property's deed should have been held in escrow at the title company, and it should not have been recorded unless and until the city actually received the $2.5 million. But at the very least, if you're going to record the deed, you should most certainly ensure that the company, the buyer, signs a mortgage agreement that is recordable and recorded. That did not happen. And so again, property has been transferred to this company, and they have the power to flip it. And there's very little we could do to stop that. This is a problem, and I want you to know that we're taking this extremely seriously. The council is looking at all options of what we can do to, one, ensure that this never happens again, but two, to see if there's anything that we can do legally to protect the interests of the city as it relates to these public assets. We know that the golf course, there's talks about selling it, as well as Edison School and other facilities throughout the city. So that's something that, many people call us about potholes, and that's very important. But our actual responsibility is not to be an obstruction, but to be a check and balance on the administration in the interest of ensuring that you, the taxpayers, are being protected and being looked out for in every way possible. So there will be more on both the vehicles as well as the sale of these major public assets in the days ahead. You also may know that the Common Council, of which I am currently president, was sued by the mayor's administration last fall over the community benefits agreement. Many very active folks within the first district, some of whom are on this call, are part of the community benefits agreement group. And my predecessor actually sponsored the legislation, the ordinance that would activate the community benefits group. And the main notion is that when we give tax abatements to companies who are looking to do development within the city, they must be engaged within the community. They must look to hire locally. They must look to use local vendors, but they also are asked to support nonprofits, support community development, because we know that that is so very important. In any event, there was a provision, and this preceded me because the actual ordinance passed in December of 2019. There was a provision in that ordinance which is legally problematic, and we recognize that. But in any event, we sought to amend that ordinance. Many of you may have, if you watch our meetings, we spent much of the summer talking about amending the community benefits agreement ordinance in a way that would make it non-problematic. A majority of the council voted for that amendment. The mayor vetoed the amendment. We were unable to override the mayor's veto, which meant that at that point, the original ordinance as unamended was activated, right? So therefore, you were in a situation where there were legal problems, and that's why we're being sued. But in any event, at our meeting yesterday, I introduced an amendment to the community benefits agreement to fix the particular issue, which is specifically about who has the power to hire the compliance officer to ensure that the developer is actually fulfilling the terms of whatever agreement they establish when they get the tax abatement. So look out for that. We'll be discussing that next week in the committee meeting. Probably won't say too much because it is pending litigation. Nevertheless, hopefully this will make the litigation moot It should have been resolved this way anyway. It should not have gotten to a lawsuit, but I guess it is what it is. That's where we are.
Yeah.
I do see a question about Nobel and Etna, Nobel and Wirt School, and I will also add Etna School, all of which are now owned by redevelopment. And so we have not heard any definitive plans about what will be done there, but rest assured, we will have someone on our call, probably in May or June, from redevelopment to talk about all of their projects, but specifically those within the first district. So thanks so much for pointing out that question. I mentioned earlier that the city is looking to receive, and I believe it will be in 2 tranches, $83 million as a part of the American Relief Act. I did meet with Congressman Mervan on Monday, and he's very excited about it. But of course, we're going to help rely on his office to ensure that the dollars are spent legally, correctly, and in accordance with the regulations. The mayor has already reached out to me, as well as a couple other council people, to be on a committee to look at how these dollars should be spent. Of course, the council, no dollars can be spent in any way without the common council appropriating how those dollars can be spent. We can't spend the dollars, but we have the power to appropriate the dollars. And we look forward to doing that in concert with the administration and, of course, in concert with the proper federal regulations. I will also add, let's see here, that the vaccination processes are moving forward. The Gary Health Department is doing a fantastic job in getting those vaccinations done. I was lucky they had an extra one when someone didn't show up, so I've been fully vaccinated now. And in part, I did that to encourage everyone. I know there's a lot of folks who are kind of on the fence about getting vaccinated, but you really need to do it. I'm still alive, and I had a few side effects, but it wasn't bad. And so I want to encourage everyone to get the vaccine, get educated. I know there's a lot of false information that flows in social media world, but we know that so many folks have been hurt by this coronavirus, and it's something that we can do something about. Earlier this week, myself and 7 other council members were given a tour of the new Hard Rock Casino, Northern Indiana, on Burr off of 94. It is absolutely amazing. It is a beautiful facility. There will be 5 restaurants in there. They will have memorabilia from the Jackson 5. In fact, the help of the Jackson brothers are already involved in partnering to have some of their instruments and memorabilia to be within the facility, but they will also highlight other Gary artists like Denise Williams and many others. They have all donated artifacts to be part of this facility. The stage, the venue is unbelievable. It seats 2,000 people. High technology. There's several stages throughout the facility. I think you're going to be very proud when you're able to visit it. It will open in mid-May. That's the target date, mid-May. So, and just for those who don't know, it's very important, whether you gamble or not, for the casino to be successful. We get about $6 million a year to run our city operations from the casino. And we have an agreement with the casino where if no one comes there, they have to pay us $6 million. But as the attendance increases, there's a formula by which we get even more money, the more folks who actually visit the casino. When the previous administration worked for years to move the casino from water-based off of Lake Michigan onto the land and to get that legislation passed, one of the key things in mind was increasing the revenue of the casino so that we then can increase the revenue that we would receive as a city to allow us to have more operations. When we talk about code enforcement and general services and police and fire and a whole lot of other services that we need and depend on, we need every penny of that $6 million. And we're hoping that given the much better location with higher traffic, we will have even more dollars to use to service all of us as residents of the city of Gary. Just lastly, you probably have heard a lot about residency. That's something that we're also pushing very hard. We do have a residency ordinance for civil city employees, police officers, sworn police officers, and firefighters are exempt by state statute, but all other city employees must live in the city unless they are granted a waiver. And that's usually only in the case of an extreme situation where there's a certain skill set or talent that is hard to capture locally. But it is always our goal to hire locally, and I want you to know that that is a priority of mine. Well, I'm mindful of the time, and I try to keep these meetings under an hour. I did want to announce that there will be a food giveaway. It's every Tuesday at Beyond Four Walls at 875 South Lake Street. So you can go there and get free food, boxes of food every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Thank Pastor Maurice White and Beyond Four Walls for partnering with the United States Department of Agriculture to bring that resource to the community. We will also have our next council meeting on April 6th, 2021. I do know that there is a somewhat controversial zoning variance, special use variance is being requested on Ironwood. I know many of the residents over there have expressed their concerns about the facility that it's a senior care, almost hospice-like facility that is being proposed over there. I have decided to stand with the residents in the immediate area who are overwhelmingly against it. I know there are some people who support it in other parts of the district, but the immediate residents have all reached out to me. They reached out to the Board of Zoning Appeals and expressed their desire not to have that use. And so the Board of Zoning Appeals last month did not render a decision, and they just sent it to us. But thankfully, at the council meeting last night, we were able to send it back to them because I'm of the opinion they should do their job. They have a job to make a decision based on the criteria, up or down, and they're to provide us with that information so that when we make a decision, we're doing it in an informed, fair, and consistent way as we do with all the other special use and zoning variances that come before us. So right now I am against it. I've expressed the concerns that the neighborhood has high density, that it's out of character for the neighborhood. I think there's questions around valuation, but I'm listening to the residents who have to live next door, and that's not what they want in their neighborhood. They want it to remain a single family residential home. So there will likely be a Board of Zoning Appeals meeting between now and April 6th, and we'll make sure that all residents are aware of that and will have the opportunity to express their opinion. But in any event, our next council meeting is on April 6th, 2021 at 6:00 p.m. Our next community meeting will be April 22nd, 6:30 p.m., and we'll be talking about public safety. So we will have both Chief Evans of our police department on the call. I will probably have Chief Sean O'Donnell from the fire department on the call, and we will have Officer Lilly, who many of us know, to talk about beach patrol as we get ready for the summer beach season, which cannot come fast enough. I know we're all ready to get back out and get to the beach and just get some more sun, some more vitamin D. That would be good for all of us. I am aware there's a, let's see here, someone asked about Airbnbs. I'm not aware of any current rules that are specific to Airbnbs. I will ask about it, but I will ask our corporation counsel's office. I know it's a challenge with what we are able to do in terms of changing those laws. The state exempts us from making changes on a lot of things. Even some of you were probably on the call last month when we had our state senator and state rep. If you didn't get to listen to the call, you should go back to the Common Council Facebook page if you're on Facebook, or the Gary Common Council YouTube page, and you can view that session that we had, because they talked about a lot of legislation that has been passed. They've even curbed cities' abilities to have landlord-tenant laws. I mean, they've really kind of really taken a strong role in local government. So there's little we can do about an individual's personal home from a citywide standpoint, given the constrictions that we have on state law, but I have no problem checking on that with our Corporation Counsel's office. So again, our next meeting will be on April 22nd at 6:30 p.m. We'll be talking about public safety, and we will be talking about beach patrol. Please look forward to more conversations about code enforcement, as well as the Garrett Community School Corporation. I think it's very important that while the council has no authority over the school corporation, that we're in conversation with them, because we know that public education and public safety together are absolutely critical to sustaining this city and to growing this city. Without those two being absolutely strong, we will not succeed. And so I will bring them back as much as possible, along with other officials throughout the county. I will have Congressman Mervan here so that you're able to hear directly from your elected officials in the various roles in which they are serving and representing all of us. I do want to acknowledge Mr. Russ Condiff, who is one of our committee persons in the 1st District, and thank him for being here. I want to also acknowledge our city judge, Judge Monroe, who is on the call this evening, and she deals with a lot of those code enforcement cases that Mr. Brinston has to bring before her court. That was a lot. I thank all of you for participating. We look forward to our next meeting. I hope these are educational and useful. You should be getting another mailer from me probably in late April, laying out our agenda for May, June, and July. Thank you so much. Have a happy St. Patrick's Day. I love you all. Take care. Good to see you, Melvin and Pauline.